Hi, this is Kimberly. This is a synopsis of Chapter 5 of the book Letters from Christopher, Tragic Confessions of the Watts Family Murders. It's by Shanann and the title of Chapter 5 is All the Money. And I thought this should be good with that title. I was thinking at first, what money? But we'll get to it. I have to be careful with this unit. It says some unflattering things about Shanann. And please remember, it's not me saying it. I'm merely conveying what's in the book that Mrs. 𝐂𝐡𝐢 indicates Chris told her. It doesn't clarify if it was during their face-to-face meetings or through letters, but I really wish she would tell us when she's starting a new chapter telling us a story. But speaking of letters, I'm also waiting for the letters from Christopher. We're already at Chapter 5 and I've not seen one yet. So far, the only letter I saw in the book is the first one she wrote to Chris. Another thing that seems to be missing to me so far is how and when did she get the information she's sharing with us? When she's doing the chapters, she doesn't say, well, for example, I talked to Cindy on the phone, or when I went and saw Chris, or Chris said in a letter. I just wish she would do that. But she starts off saying, it's hard when writing a true crime story because you only get one side of the story. So I had to stop right there on her first sentence and say that I beg to differ. I mean, that would be a choice to only get one side of the story, but that's not happening in this case. For one, she's got the Discovery version, and I can tell sometimes when she's kind of quoting from Discovery. She says she talked to Chris Watts himself in person. She says she talked to Cindy Watts, at least on the telephone. Not sure about Chris's sister Jamie, but that may or may not have taken place. But right there, that's more than one side of the story, so I take issue with that. However, it seems like in this account she's speaking only of what Chris shared with her, with a sprinkling of what seems to be the author's opinion. She does concede that Shanann is not here to defend herself, but she goes on to tell us these accounts are what I've been told, but like I said, some of it's not clear on who gave her this info. Apparently, Shanann never trusted Chris with handling money. This happened after he sold his car. I'm assuming it was the Mustang, but he sold it for less than what was owed on the loan. Correction from this earlier version, it was a four-wheeler, and I just for some reason assumed car, but it was a four-wheeler that he sold for less than what he had left on the loan. The book then goes on to detail Shanann's choices in spending money on things that they probably couldn't afford and putting money back into her Thrive business, which I understand you do have to do that when you are self-employed. They did withdraw $10,000 from Chris's 401 to catch up on late house payments. Chris said he thinks that Shanann caught up late house payments with the money that was taken from his 401k. He's not really sure what happened to that money, he says. And then, after only a couple of years out from filing bankruptcy, when they took money from the 401k, I mean, to me, did they both not think at this point, this is bad? We need to take a step back from some things and get our financial house in order? That's just me and my opinion I'm throwing in there. Chris said he felt like he made enough money to sustain their house payments, but frivolous spending seemed to be the norm around there. Book mentions that Chris said that Shanann, quote, controlled everything in the house, unquote. This seems to me to be more than just the money and the bills, with saying that Shanann controlled everything in the house. Chris said that he disapproved of the girls being in daycare from 7:15 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. 5 days a week. Sometimes it's referred to as school, sometimes it's referred to as daycare in this book. But Chris said he felt like this was a bit much given the girls' young ages and that Shanann worked from home most of the time. He felt like that was excessive, but he also says he was not allowed to have an opinion on school/daycare. This is a quote from 𝐂𝐡𝐢. There is more to the story, but Christopher thinks much was kept from him. And she doesn't go on to explain that statement. And stuff like that drives me crazy. Making these vague-ass statements and then doesn't elaborate. And then 𝐂𝐡𝐢 said, quote, he now knows there were many things with their finances that were kept from him, end quote. And I'm like, what? What? Please elaborate again. Is this stuff that he is talking about now in the book? Did he find things out after the murders? And are those being shared or not shared in this book? She just doesn't elaborate enough. Anyway, she said the girls' records were sealed by Christopher right after the sentencing, even though he does not remember signing them. And I want to know what records. She just says records. Were they medical records, autopsy records, school records, something else? I don't like how these stories told or mentioned so vaguely. You can't just say records. Let's please be specific. It is also said that money was a big stressor for Shanann as well as Chris, but their budget was stretched to the max, and part of that was due to medical bills and medications. I'm assuming these medications were for the children. As Chris said earlier in chapter 3, that because of living in Colorado and that the fact that Shanann was taking Thrive, that, quote, Shanann did not have to take any medication, unquote. It also said that Shanann liked the best of things and would sometimes shop before paying bills. This is where it gets kind of interesting, and it says Chris felt emasculated and found it hard to take the lead at work and at home. This feels like Shanann wanted to take charge husband, but he lacked the confidence to do that. 𝐂𝐡 goes on to discuss emasculation and says that according to her research, it is said to reach what is called malignancy level, hence resulting to even killing. And then doesn't really clarify that either. And then I'm wondering, are we getting off topic here? Because the title of the chapter is All the Money. Is Chris only feeling emasculated regarding money? And if so, that makes sense that we went on to this topic. And again, she does not clarify it, just that he felt emasculated. Also, I would like to know where the word emasculated came from. Was it from Chris? I'm not sure if this is like a word he would say. Is it like in his vocabulary? Like, he probably wouldn't say that in my opinion. In all seriousness, emasculation is a topic that deserves its own chapter in my opinion. What I found to be a very telling emotion, or maybe it was a way to cope, but 𝐂𝐡 says Chris told her about how when Shanann would go off on him, he would say nothing, but then he would smile to himself about how he really felt. My mind immediately goes back to that front porch interview with the news. He was smiling inappropriately, and the whole thing was bizarre. It seems like smiling thing wasn't new, or at least he would hide it and keep it to himself, is what I'm getting. But he stopped challenging Shanann when during a fight she threw him out of the house, refused to let him back in, and he had to do a lot of begging and apologizing to get back in the house and back into her good graces. And it doesn't say when this incident happened. Was it in their early dating phase, or was it more recently their marriage? It would be interesting to know when that happened, because Chris says from that point on he never challenged Shanann or argued with her, and pretty much ceased voicing his opinion on anything at all. The author says that Chris had a fear of going up against Shanann, but also that their home life was their normal. He insists the happy times outweighed the bad, but they never stopped long enough to fix issues in their marriage, according to Chris. And in my opinion, from what Chris has said, the only way the issues in the marriage would have gotten fixed is if Shanann told him what to do. And how could she when she had no idea the extent of his absurd and lewd behavior behind her back? It was a no-win situation for Shanann, in my opinion, or him. But anyway, supposedly he now misses the hell out of his family, and he seemingly knows that he and only he is to blame. I hope so. So far in this book, we've learned that Chris was afraid of God and his own shadow. He's been afraid to be himself around Shanann. He had a fear of confrontation with Shanann, and that he, quote, obviously he was afraid of her, unquote, meaning Shanann. So I'm guessing that's what 𝐂𝐡 said, the author. I'm just left with more questions than answers. I feel cheated out of a good story with this chapter. But that's pretty much where the chapter ends. And so I'm going to end the video and pick up with chapter 6 in the next one. Much love and peace. And thank you for listening.